Hello, by now. Hello, Justin. You know us. Welcome to the Banners Broadcast here on CelticsBlog.com. Two guys with us today, filling in for the CelticsBlog crew. Good friends of CelticsBlog, a former CelticsBlog member. I'm Bobby Manning, your host. And with us is the founder and owner of CLNS Radio, Nick Gelso, and Mr. Justin Poulin, a former CelticsBlog contributor, as well as the host of Celtics Stuff Live. So today, it's the middle of August. There's absolutely nothing to talk about in the Celtics realm of the world. Nothing at all. So we're throwing in an
unless you're a Cavs fan.
Yeah.
Unless you're a Cavs fan.
We're keeping a close eye on that.
Hey, who wants to talk about KYRIE again?
Did you hear what LeBron
That's like going to be my next 3 shows. It's just going to be KYRIE over and over.
Did you hear what LeBron said today, or what Sheridan come out?
Today, we heard from Chris Sheridan that LeBron is leaving Cleveland no matter what, but we're going to talk about that another show, because today we're throwing it back in time. Another era of LeBron. We saw plenty of LeBron in this era. We're going to talk about the Doc Rivers era of Celtics basketball today. Pretty much the Big Three era. They're kind of synonymous. There wasn't a whole lot to remember about the Doc Rivers era before the Big Three came together. Anything memorable, at least.
It was the only time he played the young guys. That's
that's all he had.
And when you say we're going back in time, are you going to play like a little Back to the Future theme song for us on that, or what?
We'll get that in there no matter
I'm
what.
going to bust out my skateboard and my DeLorean.
So the first 2 games that come to mind for me in this era, and you two, of course, got to see this era up front in person, many games between Justin's time in the Garden and Nick's as well. It was an interesting time. We never knew when it was going to end. Every single year toward the end of it, it seemed like we were going to ask, is it one more year? Is it one more year? And then it was over like this. And the first 2 games that come to mind for me is the last game and the championship game in 2008. We're going to start with that one because Justin was in the house. A blowout, of course. What sticks out to you about that? Never, we'll never forget.
I wish I could say what sticks out about it has anything to do with Doc Rivers, but what really sticks out is Brian Scalabrine at the podium afterwards. Just, can I say lit? He was lit, dude. He had a lot of champagne, and he was 100% into that post-game press conference. And I remember the confetti. I remember anything is possible, and I remember that. It was long. I remember it was June 17th, 2008, because I was really bought into this whole number 17 is my lucky number. And so it was meant to be. The fact that it happened on June 17th was pretty awesome. Not to mention, June makes it 617. So there you go for the Boston area code, too.
Yeah, definitely the celebration of that game was what stuck out. Everyone was going nuts. You had the KG moment. Anything is possible. And then in the locker room after, on the podium after, everyone was just an absolute joy. You had everyone stacked on the sideline, just ready to spill on the court in those final seconds. It was like those 30 seconds, then the game was never going to end. And that's how a championship should be. Not every celebration's like that. That's one of the best I remember.
You can knock Doc Rivers all you want. But the fact is that was a tight-knit clubhouse. Yeah, they loved him. He loved them. And there were definitely a lot of tears flying around after that win. And the fact that it happened year 1 is just amazing. But I can tell you, they all respected. That's the one thing. You can knock Doc Rivers all you want. He's a player's coach. The players loved him, and that locker room did follow suit. And I think part of it is because they were so good and the players knew what to do, that Doc could kind of turn it over to them.
But it's not a micromanager.
Not a micromanager at all. That's right.
It kind of took over a game of its own so many times. Like, he'd just be standing there. They'd be way down in these games, and something would just click at the right moment, and they'd be right back in the game. And nothing was more evident of that. It wasn't a win, but I put it on this list just because it was so exemplary of the Doc Rivers era. It was the very last game. The game before Doc got traded, before Pierce, Garnett got traded. They went on that 20-0 run against the Knicks. Game 6, almost pushed it to a Game 7 after being down 3-0. Nick, it wasn't a win, but it just felt like something clicked in that final few minutes right there. They just kept going and going and going. Melo got hurt. Pierce had that crazy dipsy-do layup that got them to within 8, I think it was at that point, with the and one, and it felt like it was never going to stop. It ultimately did with that Jeff Green missed free throw and the Iman Shumpert steal. But that game, even though it was a loss, it was one of the more memorable ones of the era, being the last one, of course. Yeah,
I let's not forget Rondo was injured, right? Yeah. So that was a very tough series, and
Pierce was playing 3. I mean, Pierce was playing the point a lot.
Pierce was playing point forward, and that wasn't real fashionable then, unless you were LeBron. And yeah, I mean, I don't know that was one of Doc's best coaching, because it was a typical Celtics, especially that season. Go down by 20, and the last 5. I could hear Justin and John complaining about it on Celtic Stuff Live. You know, go down to the last 4 or 5 minutes of the game and then turn it on and just don't have enough in the end. But kind of the last stand for that team, even though it was a loss, and it led to the Nets picks. So here we are today. Great bridge.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get into the real top 10 list, the meat of the list, primarily constructed by Nick Gelso. We'll give him credit for that. The killer memory, the photographic memory, I'll say.
You're an elephant, dude. You're an elephant.
I'm not going to lie. Larry might have helped me a little bit. I'm not going to lie.
Oh, there we go. Now the secret's out.
So we'll start Christmas Day 2009. There's a lot of Orlando Magic on this list. We're really going to dive back into that old rivalry. This was when Paul Pierce was out. He had a knee infection. Tony Allen was starting in his spot. Scored 16 points. Ray Allen led the team with 18. Rondo was a monster that game. It was one of those games where he kind of just pulled everything together with his facilitation. I think he was 17, 13, and 8. Came away just short of the triple-double. And at this point, the Celtics went to 23-5. Nick, this was one of your favorite games on the list. What stuck out about this one?
That was 08-09, correct? Yeah. 08-09. So before the KG injury, Paul was out. It was Christmas Day. It was, of course, not at the Garden. Rondo loved torturing Jameer Nelson, and I think you saw it in that matchup as he went for the triple double. And of course, Ray always came up. I know, sorry, Justin. Ray always came up big in big moments, and he did at that moment, and it was a great win for the Celtics. I think Big Baby started. Did Big Baby start? No, Big Baby didn't start.
I believe it was Tony Allen.
It was Tony.
It
Allen.
had to be Tony.
Yeah, it was TA. Yeah. Who was also really frustrating at that time, you know, because of the 2 years earlier he had the knee blowout, and then he just couldn't get the ball up the court so often.
He lost his lift. That's all we talked about during that time, Nick. If you remember, it was like, this guy is never going to get back to being the defender that could shut down Chauncey Billups if he just had that veteran savvy. That's what we were really kind of hoping for was, you know, we need a player, a young guy, who's going to be able to go in and be a lockdown defender, and probably almost 2 seasons, and definitely a season and a half. He lost that, and he lost his lateral motion, and it just seemed like he wasn't ever – you thought he was going to end up just being a bust. And then look at what he wound up having a career with Memphis.
Yep.
The one thing I remember about that game, too, was KG in the final minutes. Landed hard on his back, and, of course, that came to be the season defined by Garnett's injury issues, torn off the rails at the very end with him getting knocked out for the season. And that was probably the first game all year, 23-5, where he kind of got knocked off his feet a little bit from the dominant stretch he was on. So it was a win.
And then, of course, that led to the knee injury that led to 3 years of talking about the gait in his defense. Remember, he had the gait in his step. Right, that was many a time on Celtics Late Night Show and Celtic Stuff Live.
Yeah, we're throwing it back to the early days of CLNS on this one. So
yeah, man.
Another one I had on here was Boston Miami Game 5, 2012. This is getting into my era, really getting entrenched in the team. And also my era of feeling like it's over way before it actually is over. The Celtics taking a 3-2 lead in this one. 2012 was fun. It was the lockout year. And they needed that lockout. It kept the season short for them. I think it was just over 50 games, so they were able to stay relatively healthy that season. And they went on a run at the end. They caught fire. They made it all the way to the series. It went home and home, I think, through the first 4 games of the series. And they go in Miami on the road. And I think what stuck out about this one for me is they took their shots defensively. I mean, Wade was going at them all game long. LeBron, they were allowing him to stand on the perimeter and shoot, and that was always a good strategy back then. But then the moment I always remember, and it just sits in my mind, is Pierce hitting the three in the final moments, and all you can see is everybody in the crowd wearing all white with the look of agony on their faces.
Iconic picture. It's an iconic picture.
It's like the Manny home run against Anaheim. It's one of the great photos in Boston history, even though the ending isn't so great, but that's kind of Boston.
You thought that locked up the series. There was no way in your brain that you thought that they were going to lose that in Boston. Like that was the clincher for that series in most of our minds. And then, of course, LeBron did LeBron, and really that's when the torch was fully passed. I mean, that, like you said, Bobby, that's when you knew it was kind of over. The era wasn't going to make it. But geez, that game, you thought, wow, what heroics! And as you mentioned, so perfect that shortened season, because you knew they were going to be healthy, you knew they were going to be able to make that run, and that's why you thought they had plenty left in the tank to take it. But the truth is, the King brought it home.
And at that point, the image of LeBron was so much different, Nick, wasn't it? It's like day and night from today.
Day and night, and I'm not going to get into today, but yeah, it was day and night. I mean, he was trying to embrace the villain role and not really doing a really good job of it. But that people forget too, that series, I think Bradley got injured, correct? Avery was injured.
Avery was
shoulder.
Injured going into the series.
And
he was our big defender on Wade too.
He was our big defender on Wade.
We needed him.
And there was all that locker room tension between Rondo and Ray and Bradley. Of course, he's never around drama, but his name was being thrown in there because of the rotations. And I think we forget the series leading up to that Cleveland series. That Philadelphia series was incredible. Rondo, who I'm not a fan of, but he was just tremendous in that Philadelphia series, hitting clutch shots and that was a fun run. It reminded me of 2010, maybe a little more unlikely because they were older. But it was fun. It was fun. It came down to Game 7, baby.
Definitely unlikely. I don't think anyone saw the Celtics that late in the run going that far, and I still feel like they should have been in the finals. I really do. Game 5 was the memorable one. Game 6 was the one we all want to forget in that series.
But that was also the Let's Go Celtics chant. That's where it originated. And now
that wasn't enough.
No.
Going back to Miami, they couldn't get the second road win they needed in that series.
Yep.
So let's go back earlier in this season. This was a good one. Magic-Celtics, once again. Brandon Bass switched over to the Celtics by this time. That was the end of the Glenn Davis era. And he had a great game against his old team in this one. This was the bar fight game. 27-point comeback, running great screens, bringing Avery Bradley over the top, hitting his deep twos. You had Kevin Garnett in this game, and I was watching the highlights. Stepping out from three wide open, stepping inside the arc and hitting a shot from deep two. We would never see that today. And they just kept scrapping together those offensive possessions. Van Gundy kept calling timeouts, kept trying to get some defensive pushback. And the run just never stopped coming. And the Celtics came all the way back down, almost 30. And that was really a turning point for this team this season. They said they still got it. They can still string together these stops. Kevin Garnett at that time started playing a lot of center rather than power forward. After
he was finally accepting the center role, at least in private.
that didn't take forever. No. And you want to talk about cementing a real player relationship with Doc Rivers. That's when Brandon Bass became somebody that was considered indispensable by him.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, at that point, you just knew he was going to end up with the Clippers or wherever Doc went.
Yep.
You know, Brandon Bass was a huge, huge favorite of Doc Rivers. So
one of my favorites, too.
That had to cement it.
Yeah, my first article ever at CelticsBlog was saying goodbye to Bass because he really grew a lot here. He was a very, very flawed player in Orlando. And by the time he left here, great, versatile defender, always was reliable with his jump shot, and he became a starter by the end of his time here with the Big Three team, which is pretty impressive.
The real issue with him was the fact that he wasn't around veterans, and he is such a perfect role player. You know, plug him into a spot start so that your guy gets some rest. Count on him to do the right thing. Never mess up the plays. Don't confuse other young players who have a minor role on the team. He's the consummate, seventh man. I know we always have the six-man award, but he was the perfect seventh man.
It's true, and in that game in particular, it was a bar fight. It was one of those games where Doc was calling a lot of heavy pick and rolls and a lot of play calling. and a lot of running Avery and Ray off screens, and that was vintage Doc, and proved out they won that game. They came back. The bar fight, man, that's iconic now.
Yeah, that's probably second to his championship yell at the end. You could always count on a good Kevin Garnett post.
A couple cusses, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. We're on live TV, Kevin. So Spurs Celtics 2008, really the game that proved that year that the Celtics were legit, that they were among the best in this league. The Spurs were one of the unbreakable teams of the 2000s, and the Celtics went out there and really took control of that game early. Nick, I know this was one in particular you really remember from that season.
I think that was that KG was injured, right?
Yeah,
KG had the injury.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was one of those proven moments to make a point with KG out, Big Baby Davis starting, the rookie, and going against the defending champions. It was one of those aha moments where you said, yeah, these guys have it. They have it. And I just, particularly that one stands in my mind.
One that I love.
It kind of,
yeah.
Well, let me just add to that. It kind of reminds me of a couple of seasons ago when the Celtics made that first run against Golden State and almost stole that game.
Yeah,
because you didn't really know where that team was. I can't even remember if Isaiah was fully entrenched in the starting lineup yet. If you remember that season,
wasn't, I don't think,
with Market, right? And then all of a sudden, it's like they give Golden State a run, and we thought, wait a second, this is supposed to be one of the worst teams in the league. They finished strong last year. Let's see if they can, continue that, or if it was sort of motivated by the trade at the deadline for Isaiah. And yeah, they had good heart, but let's see them do it for a season. When they kind of shook Golden State, it was a precursor to the win they'd get later in the year. But that's when you kind of knew that they had truly arrived. And we still didn't know what to make. Every writer was telling us that the Big Three era wasn't going to work. It's too many egos, and they'll never do it in the first year. And even Bob Ryan is saying it wouldn't happen until year 2 or 3, they thought. And here they were. That game, to your point, Nick, was the game that said, wait a second, this might actually happen this year.
Yeah. Aha moment.
Another good game early in the Big Three era. Well, not particularly early, sort of in the middle of the Big Three era when that Heat team was starting to come together, really build toward something that threatened the Celtics and knocked them off the throne in the East. That game with the Rondo alley-oop, probably one of the great play calls of...
This is Doc.
The Doc era, absolutely.
Doc and
what I remember about this play in particular, and I'll let you run away with the Rondo play, Nick, is Wade before the play, stealing the ball at 99-99, rushing through. This was in Miami, and him just slamming all over everybody at the other end and taking the lead at that point. Wade was a killer. For the whole time, the Celtics era, the Doc Rivers era, Wade was a guy I was scared of more than anyone. In fact, this was the year where I really was like, all right, fine, he's not that big of a deal anymore. Like, it took all the way up until this year for that to leave my mind. And that game, again, was a point where I was like, wow.
Well, wait, hold on, Bobby. Settle down, because the first game the Celtics played
that's right.
This year, Dwayne Wade was actually hitting three-pointers. And the one thing I'll also say about that is everything is true about that except for one moment that made the Celtics fan believe that Avery Bradley was indispensable when he just stuffed him at the rim. And then we were like victory! But Bradley has always been a good one-on-one defender. Obviously, we talked about him. We'll miss him this coming season. But I would say that Dwayne Wade more often than not, to your point, Bobby, got the better of the Celtics regardless of Avery's defense.
Yeah,
in this game.
Yeah, and it was Allen on the ball. Wade took it from him, and then the whole Heat team celebrating like they won this game. They're all coming out on the court, grabbing Wade. The Celtics are running their huddle, and what was the play, Nick?
It was just a beautiful. It was a play they had run before, and they run since too, afterwards. But it was that beautiful, and I say it was Doc at his finest, but it was also Rondo at his finest. That pass. I mean, you want to talk about putting it right in the hands and in the rim. From what? How many feet away is that? 50 feet away? 40 feet away? I mean, it's at the baseline almost.
Yeah.
An incredible play.
On the clock.
Yeah.
You immediately thought the game was over. So it was one of those games where, you were kind of a little bit agitated, and then this happens, and you are screaming at the TV in your living room because you're so excited.
From agitated to adulated, no doubt.
There you go.
And the other thing that's so crazy about that is, why aren't you defending that? It's the only option. I mean, that's what's so crazy. It's like there were moments like that led us to believe that Doc Rivers was the most amazing coach ever.
It's amazing.
It's like, who's he coaching against? And listen, that's the only option. Like,
how many
put everybody in front of the rim and like defend the Hail Mary? Like, how are you not seeing that?
It's almost it is worse, but it's up there with Ray Allen fading in the corner. How I used to call into your show, Justin, and say, just looking at it from the opposite perspective, how is he open? He's the best shooter in the league. I mean, it was. I
don't think one of those things that to be the guy that you throw the alley-oop to at the rim, and the guy guarding him, I forget who it was so caught off guard. He's turning around, chasing Rondo to the rim. He gets there at the last second. It's way too late. And it was the pass from Paul Pierce.
Paul Pierce to Rondo was just right into Rondo's hands, and it was beautiful. And
Pierce,
it was
before his time. Good facilitating small forward. I mean, that wasn't a big deal back then, like you said earlier in the show, and he certainly wasn't a guy you want doing it all the time like he was in 2013 after Rondo went down. But in spurts, great passer, especially with all the pressure he commanded on the ball. And
it was all those years with no help, where the offense completely ran through him, and much of that was Doc Rivers, right? Because Doc's like, first off, Doc was the hardest person on point guards, and second off, they didn't have any. And they were always looking for one, and they were trying out guys like J.R. Bremer and all this craziness.
J.R. Bremer.
How are we going to satisfy the point guard scenario? And even Rondo obviously struggled to meet Doc Rivers' expectations at that position. But we knew he was a point guard killer, and so all of those years when nobody was around to help Paul, the very bottom of the bottom, that all led to what you just said, his passing ability, all those away from the ball, the non-shooting contributions. And, he kicked up his defense in the big three era a little bit because he was relied upon so much in the offense, but mostly because he had to facilitate it every night in and night out.
That play, and I had it backwards, but that play had been run so many times, Rondo to KG, and this was Pierce to Rondo, which is correct, which is I think the intelligence or the brilliance of the play with Doc Rivers, having send your point guard, but with those long arms and big hands, there was no way he was missing that oop if he was even close to being open. And the pass from Paul was perfect.
Yeah, perfect. And another good passing game I remember from Pierce was Game 4, 2010 Finals, Lakers-Celtics back at the Garden. And this was another big swing game in this era. And they really were great at taking those swing games in the series, whether they won it or not. In the middle of these series, they were really able to take control. They did it in 08 too. This series, they ultimately didn't win, but this was very memorable. This is the Glenn Davis, Nate Robinson game. And in
the Shrek and Donkey, is that what it was?
Yep, the Shrek and Donkey game. And on the side, Rasheed Wallace.
What a thing of beauty that was.
Yeah.
It was like Dumb and Dumber, wasn't it? I mean, that and the nicest.
Only Stephen Marbury could have made that moment better.
He made the list.
I know he's on the list. I'm setting it up.
You're setting it up, baby.
That's how I do. I'm a pro.
That's how you go. Yeah, you trained us all, Justin.
That's right.
We're going to pivot there in 1 second, but Glenn Davis in this game. Really, the big thing about Glenn Davis is him being big. And in this game, he was one of the guys who really turned this into a physical bloodbath of a game. There were guys all over on the ground wrestling for loose balls, beating each other up on the ground inside the paint. And more often than not, Davis won those battles in this game. There were a few great runs of passing between Gasol, between Odom. Kobe had a monster third quarter in this game, but then Pierce just starts swinging it on the drives to Nate Robinson. He starts hitting his threes. Davis gets those putbacks bumping inside, and they pull away by 5 at the end of this game and won what looked to be a huge swing game early in this series. After an awful Game 3, if you remember, in that series, they got destroyed in Game 3.
That was the Derek Fisher game?
Lakers.
Game 3?
Mm-hmm. And the game where Ray Allen was just nothing after he broke the finals record for three-point shooting earlier in that series.
Yep. Justin, did you cover those games in 10?
I think I did. I think
I think I remember Duke being at one.
No, I didn't. I had moved to Pennsylvania.
I think Duke went to a game or two. If I remember.
I moved to Pennsylvania late 2009, right in the very beginning of that season. So no, I didn't. You're right. Duke went.
Yep. That was. I mean, that is my favorite. I think if I was to listen to Celtics beat this week, that's my favorite run. I mean, obviously 2008 has its memories, but that 2010 team was so bad down the stretch. And just turn. I mean, we used to hear that all the time, right, guys? Can Doc get them to flip the switch? Can Doc get them to flip the switch? Well, that year, everybody from Sheed to KG, who was hobbling, just flipped the switch, and they were incredible. And unfortunately, it came down to an injury to Perkins, and it ended up some poor officiating, and Game 7 went to L.A.
And as always, they just didn't rebound. To this day,
no, to this day, man.
I always say my whole Celtics life, they just haven't rebounded. It's just a
Which
fact.
Is funny.
Hey, hold on. When that crosses over multiple coaches, do we really blame the coach at that point, or do we look at the front office and say there's an analytics thing at play here, and they're going to sacrifice rebounds? I understand they've never been a big team. I understand that, maybe the personnel, it's not like they went out and got a Dikembe Mutombo or shot blocker, rebounder, but maybe that's by design. You look at the way the Patriots build their team, they find value. They were the first team to not spend a lot of money on a running back. Maybe this is the NBA version of that.
Yeah,
this is the first club to not spend a lot of money on a shot blocker, right?
Yeah. I think first of all, it's ironic because it's the franchise that spawned the original shot blocking rebounder with Bill Russell. But I do think it's by design, Justin, because you're now through two coaches, 10 years or longer, 10 years, and Danny Ainge it's never really been. He says it's a priority, but it's never been a priority. Now, Bobby, when we were your age,
he just said basically his whole life. He just said.
I heard him.
I don't remember the Celtics in my lifetime rebounding. I don't remember a single season, even the 2008 team.
Well, the 2008 team struggled on the offensive boards, I think, at least. It used to be very frustrating. And the Celtics, when I was your age, Bobby, they were the dynamite rebounders. They used to dominate the boards with the big three, and it would be frustrating to watch. But as long as the score was in the Celtics' favor at the end, we all kind of dealt with it. I'd listen to Justin and John, complain about it, but the win's a win.
You had to lament it when you watch the other team get 3 or 4 extra possessions. I mean, you know what I mean? Like when they get the ball back and you're not going the other way, it's like, okay, one offensive rebound, we can suffer that fool for a little bit. But when you start talking the second, the third, it's like, when is this possession going to end?
How many times would we watch the Celtics play tremendous defense, run the shot clock down, the opposing team would yank up a nonsense BS shot because there was no good shot, and then get the offensive board. And you could hear a collective slap on your couch all across New England because everybody be so annoyed. And Pennsylvania
it wears down the team. They get exhausted.
Definitely.
They really get worn out, and they get defeated. I mean, the mentality of that is very defeating. And so if there was one way to put any Celtics club over, really the Brad Stevens or Doc Rivers era, if there was any way to make them want to say uncle, that was how you did it. Mm-hmm. It was just go grab the rebounds and just beat them up a little bit. And really, that's a hustle thing. So as they would get more defeated,
a personnel thing too.
It works. Right, but with their personnel, they would have to hustle.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then they would just put it in the hoop.
Yep.
Right? And then they would miss one that was wide open and still get the offensive rebound. And you could just see the team like, we're giving you the damn it. This one. Just put it in there. Put us out of misery and let us go on offense and try to get a spark.
And honestly, that's all we're talking about 2010 still. That's all that really worked for the Lakers in that Game 7. They were a mess all across the team offensively in that game. And the only reason they were able to keep in it is because the Celtics were playing early was those rebounds. That front line of Odom, Gasol, Bynum.
Well, and you had Sheed, who was so out of shape. I mean, he played okay for having to step in. I mean, in that playoff run, he did flip the switch, but by Game 7 against LA, he looked so gassed, and he had the bad back, and he wasn't ready to step into Perkins' shoes, and that was that. And then we lost Marquise Daniels too. Don't forget, he seemed to get injured every game. Every big game, Marquise would get a concussion or something. He was always injured. He was tinfoil.
So 2009, we're gonna go back to the Magic yet again. We got Game 4 and Game 5 on here. Of course, this is the season where we lost in this series. Another great pair of swing games where they just couldn't finish out at the very end. And the Magic ended up in the finals, which wasn't good for anybody.
It's true.
So, Game 4, you had the Marbury. Game 4 was the Glenn Davis game, pushing the kid on the sideline after the game winner. And
which was... Go ahead.
And Game 5, you have the Marbury game, as you talk about. Just a great pair of wins. And the Celtics, again, how many times did they do it? Go up 3-2 and blow it.
Yeah, I mean, again, frustrating. No KG. Yeah, facepalm. No KG. Big baby steps up and then barrels over some kid, which was unintentional, but it was typical big baby.
Yeah.
That Marbury game, I remember, Justin, you probably remember too, all season long, since they picked up Marbury is kind of like that mid-season help. Doc and Danny saying he's going to win a game for us. He's going to win a game for us. He's going to win a game for us. He did nothing, and then that Game 5, I think it was, at the Garden, he just went off. And the Garden went crazy. Everybody was happy for him, and it was a fun game. And that was a Doc thing. He's going to win a game for us. So it was good to see.
And Justin, I want to ask
go ahead.
Those Magic teams, they didn't beat the Celtics at first until they got to 2009, but they were always frustrating. Great shooting all around a powerful center. It was really a strangely built team. We haven't seen one quite like it in this era, at least, or in that era, kind of the middle.
I'd have to say during that era that the Celtics always, for the most part, besides 2009, got the best of them. 2010, the Celtics just punked everybody.
Yeah.
And the Magic were part of that whole steamroll. And Rondo just loved driving Jameer Nelson crazy, and it was just the right. Garnett used to, and Perkins, Justin, remember Perkins used to drive Dwight Howard nuts just by, 4 inches shorter, but he just beat the hell out of him. And
he would muscle him. You'd see Dwight set up just inside the key, and Perkins would just come over and push him away from the basket, and Dwight. I know everybody kind of touted him as a good shooter or solid, but he really wasn't.
No,
and especially if you could get him sort of pushed
in
back
his head.
on his heels
and
a
in
little
his head.
bit. Yeah, and then Perkins would he didn't really have his hand up all that real much in Dwight's face, but Dwight was not in the position he wanted to be to shoot that. You're right. Perkins was our Dwight Howard killer.
Stopper,
we loved it.
Yep.
Now Dwight would still get his points, but the fact that he was minimized a little bit and even rebounding to some degree, you expected Dwight to get a lot more. Like he was going off for 17 to 21 rebounds a game at that time.
Right.
And we would usually hold him to under 14, which was a win with Dwight Howard of that era. Jameer Nelson was a fun player to watch. I will say, as much as you might remember that Stephon Marbury, game, the thing I remember the most about Stephon Marbury was after that, when he started doing the live video
with the Vaseline
crib, right? And you just like follow him around, and he was all about the first sort of, it wasn't Facebook Live. I can't even remember the app they used to use, but he just had his phone. He was following, you'd follow him around, and I'm pretty sure you'd just go to Twitter, find the feed, and watch him. But the dude was crazy.
Yeah, then he lost his mind. He ate a jar of Vaseline on camera, remember? and then everybody he never got another job. I think went back to China and played or something.
Which, by the way, they're erecting a statue to him, so he got something right over there.
Yes,
but
yeah.
We're going to swing ahead to 2013.
He flipped the switch. He's just going to go. He's going to go become the greatest player ever to play a giant.
Yeah. He was always intent on doing that.
Yep.
So 2013, this was the moment in this season where and there were a lot of moments throughout this era where the team really came together despite their age, despite some of the bumps and bruises in the road. And this was the year where they lost Rondo, as we said before, and he didn't play in this game. It was the Heat Celtics game, the year after the loss to the Heat in 2012. Ray Allen changes teams infamously, and this was his return. He goes over the bench. He had the mixed reaction in the crowd. He tries to greet KG, and KG just blows him off, which pretty much filled the newsreels for the week following that. But this was a great game beyond that. Double overtime. Jeff Green.
Yeah, I was just going to say, he hit the game winner from the corner, right? Mm-hmm. That game was so much fun because we just hated the Heat. Mm-hmm. And think about all the controversy of trading Kendrick Perkins for Jeff Green, and then he goes off and hits that one, and you're thinking, we're off to a great start.
Yep.
No. And that was a tough Heat team that year. I mean, even in the finals against a very good Spurs team, the Spurs just couldn't shut them down at the very end. They had so much shooting on the bench. Ray Allen really brought a great element to that team, even though he had ups and downs that year. But they were able to knock down a three on you all the time. Even LeBron himself had a great three-point shooting year that year, I remember. And that game just kept going and going and going, and there were so many big shots down the stretch. Pierce put them up initially in double overtime there toward the end, and it was just a classic game, and it made me believe they maybe had one more run in them, which of course they didn't.
They didn't. Pierce was, you're always the eternal optimist. The only one in New England, Bobby. Everybody else is a cliff jump. You're the only one always rooting, but Pierce was exceptional in that game, if I remember, and I think it was like a low-grade triple-double he had, if I remember properly. It was like very, it was
what is a low-grade triple-double?
It's like where you sneak it in. It's like 16, 10, and 11.
I thought you were going to give me like a hockey number, like 10 and a half assists. Yeah, 9.5 assists, we'll round it up.
Right. But, it was a double. I mean, Paul was just great. Double overtime game. KG stepped it up. I think KG hit a big shot down the stretch. Fun game. Fun. And then, of course, Ray, the mixed reaction from the crowd. That was a big debate. Will Ray get booed? Which he did, I think, a little bit.
Did we get back to the Ray Allen thing?
I keep looking at Justin because I'm waiting.
Nick just loves
I do love Ray. Ray was, he was my man.
It. Low grade triple-double, 17, 13, and 10. There
you go, man. What was it, 17?
13 and 10.
Yeah, and in 2 overtimes, so that's really a low-grade triple-double.
All right, I'll give you that. He's got extra time. Okay, low grade because it wasn't in regulation.
There you go. But, Paul was great, and it was really one of those games where it was back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Great coaching by Doc, great play calling down the end. And KG, who, if I remember, I think he was kind of held back through most of that game. He was huge in the fourth quarter and then overtime, and then, of course, Jeff Green.
And this is going to be the first time in my life I do back in my day, but back in that era...
It won't be the last.
No, it won't.
Back in that era, there were more back-and-forth games like that, down the stretch in the double, especially in the playoffs, and comebacks, too. And, less three, better defense.
That was the year of pride. It was the year of pride. They knew what was coming, and they played with pride. That's how that season went.
They did. But I agree, though, Bobby. There were less threes, less misses, less possessions, less opportunity to have.
Yeah, and you were able to work back possession by possession back then. Yeah. There weren't as many killer threes that cut the comebacks off. And
I sound like an old man now, but I miss that. I like that brand of basketball better than chucking up threes nonstop. It frustrates me to no end.
Yeah, and we're going to see if it ever does swing back the other way to interior game. We've had debates about that again and again. And I'm a little optimistic because I think we're starting to see some transcendent bigs come back into the game, including in this next draft, but we'll talk about that another day. One game left on here. The 24-point comeback against the Lakers in the 2008 finals. We saved the best for last. They don't win this series without this. This puts them up commanding 3-1. It was the road win you really need in the finals, especially back in the 2-3-2 days. If you don't get a road win, you're not winning that series. And they did it here. They were down 24. They pushed back possession by possession, like I said. It was a team that really made the most of possessions, even being down as large as they were in some of these games, 24, 27 against the Magic, and doing it on the road so far away in L.A. Big mental
I'm going to be quiet and let Justin talk about this one because this is his series, man.
Well, it was, I mean, I don't even know where you go. Like, how do you dig out on the road in LA like that? The grit. I don't know what other word to use. I'm not even going to go into the details of the game because obviously so many big shots, so many big plays. But just seriously, how do you have that kind of grit when the game really should have been lost, right? I mean, this thing was so far out of hand, and then for them to just dig so deep and have that grit, and there was nobody who, I mean, we talk about a pride year. I mean, this didn't need to be a pride year. This was kind of, nobody would have faulted them if they had lost that game and then the series had slipped away. There would have been the whole there's always next year, and that's why I give them so much credit for grit because they're like, no, we are not going down like this. We are absolutely not. And then to climb back in and win it. I mean, it's unfortunate because it's one of those games I wish I was in attendance for.
Mm-hmm. I tend to remember, well, first of all, Paul Pierce playing at home was incredible. I remember that. Bobby, you may have to check this, but I think Doc sat Rondo for much of that game and went with very seldom used. I mean, it was a couple games where you didn't hear it all from Eddie House. He ended up getting playing time. I think Cassell got playing time. I think Rondo sat. Posey too. So, that's another big move from Doc. And I think Rondo might have been fighting a bit of an ankle injury, but knowing Rondo, he would have wanted to play anyway.
Is that when Leon Powell got his first substantial opportunity in that series? Did Doc throw him in when they were down?
Went deep into
yeah, because I feel like in that. Really, I mean, I know they went to him a few times, but again, he was a younger player, and again, I don't. It wasn't the big game that he had in that series. I don't believe.
I think that was Game 5. I think
it was the next game, right? The next game he came out on
Leon Powell.
Right. That's when Phil Jackson's
this game was dominated by those sets of House, Allen, Pierce, Posey, Garnett, and they really spread the floor open. The Lakers tried to counter with some of the guys off their bench,
but no Rondo.
But yeah, not a lot of Rondo in this game, and they won the shooting battle. They really did.
They were better shooters.
Yeah.
That was a better shooter. The Lakers were favored in that series, and Justin, you could talk more to this. I think more because of the fact that the Celtics played such a terrible first and second round, plus the
No, they went 7 in their first series. Right. I mean, that was the biggest thing was everybody looked at it and said, geez, you almost lost in the first round. Like you've looked like this awesome 60-plus win team, and now here you are, and you're going 7 games in the first round.
35 win Atlanta.
So there we have it. Yeah, you got anything more to say, Nick?
Yeah, I want to ask you guys one thing. So Justin in particular, because Bobby, I don't know if you were born yet, but 2010 Game 6 versus the Cavs, did LeBron just quit?
We're talking 2010, I guess?
Yeah. Well, before he left, before the decision.
Yeah, he pretty much knew he was leaving. I think
the elbow. I was at that game. It was they were hitting MSG.
We'll pull this back to now. Because we did have that report we talked about at the very beginning of the show where we'll see if it's true or not. LeBron
I'm just trying to tie it all together.
Yeah, LeBron seems intent on leaving after this season. And what I ask is the focus going to be there if he looks ahead and sees the door at the end of the season, no matter what happens?
Justin and John had a great conversation about this on Celtic Stuff Live this week. And, I think one of you guys had brought it up about, is it one of those moments where LeBron, like in 2010, already has one foot out the door and they get into a series with the Celtics, and just like in 2010, he throws his hands up in the air. You guys discussed that this week, Justin.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think this thing's a train wreck. I mean, it's already at that point.
It's bad.
And it is. And I think a lot of Adrian Wojnarowski had an awesome article this week about it, just talking about the position that the Cavs are in. He's basically said that the team is already at a point where they realize that they can't sacrifice Kyrie Irving for nothing just to satisfy LeBron, because ultimately they won't get what they need in return to keep LeBron. And so, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. If they get pennies on the dollar or pieces for the future, and LeBron's in the postseason trying to carry this team and it just doesn't happen, and the Celtics look poised to really take advantage of that. You're absolutely right. I think LeBron's already got one foot out the door.
Oh, he does.
He's not really great at keeping quiet. When they got rid of David Griffin, huge mistake, right? Like, he'll leak stuff out. He doesn't care to let
everything was fine before
Absolutely,
that.
Yep. And
there was think LeBron didn't orchestrate that. Don't think LeBron didn't orchestrate that. And the other thing too is
hold on, one other thing. Don't think LeBron isn't thinking major market to close out his career.
Of course that's what he's thinking.
Because it's his last. I mean, listen, nobody is going to do what Jordan did post-career ever again.
No. Or Magic, for that matter. Or Magic.
Or Magic. But there's not going to be, the LeBrons. There's not going to be a sneaker that goes out and rolls the way that the Jordans have held on, right? They're still selling those. That is an institution. LeBron's not going to compete with that. Will he still have prominence? Will he still have a play? Yeah, of course. He'll still make money. He'll still be long. They'll see LeBron until the day he dies around this sport for sure. But will he make money the way that LeBron did the way that Jordan did off endorsements and whatnot? No. And I think this is his last real cash out. And especially if he goes to LA and then all of a sudden the Golden State Warriors and the Spurs and the Lakers are all battling. It raises his profile. He's got to be feeling like in the Eastern Conference, everybody is just waiting for us to get to the finals and see what we can do. Yeah. And, they want that regular season hype.
And I'll say this, too, about this whole situation. It's not 2010 where it was really bad in Cleveland. You look at the team then, you look at the team now.
No, I don't want to hear that. Wait a minute. Cleveland in 2010 had 62 wins. They had still a semi-good Shaquille O'Neal. Everybody's going to laugh because he was a turd, as you guys like to put it. But Mo Williams made the All-Star game, I think, that year. He did one of those years in there. They had Varejao, they had a 60-win team. I don't want to hear, and I'm still arguing this 7 years later. I do not want to hear LeBron James was a goof. He was playing bowling. Remember, Justin, they used to play bowling and pretend the other guys on the team were the bowling pins. Everything was a joke. It was a foregone conclusion that Cleveland was going to march to the finals, and the Celtics shocked them, and LeBron gave up, and that was that. But don't say that team was bad. They were not, and I'll get beat up on Celtics blog for this, I'm sure.
Hold on, YouTube. They weren't good like the teams of today or good with all the loaded talent.
No,
but
hold on, better.
If you take it in context, did he have a supporting cast? No, but that was when he knew. A supporting. Yeah, so
you gotta have multiple superstars.
And that was the beginning of that. Now, because of what the Celtics did, which is why he was frustrated. Right. And if he did give up, he gave up because he realized that there was no way he was going to be able to do it without, to Bobby's point, another superstar. Mm-hmm. Without a Kevin Love, without a Kyrie Irving. They had Ray Allen, they had Paul Pierce, they had Kevin Garnett versus the best man in basketball in the universe. Right. And he could not will that team to that victory. And that is, if I give up, maybe more like had a realization.
Remember, he took off his jersey at the end of the game. It was like through the jersey. Don't forget, guys, he changed his number at the beginning of the season because Miami had already retired 23. Then he goes back to Cleveland and takes 23 again. I mean, come on. He was talking. Him and Pat Riley were having late-night text sessions. They were talking all season long. And that's conspiracy theory, but I'll put my stamp on that. I believe that's true.
If they didn't talk directly. They talked through somebody who's allowed to talk, and that's not really a hard thing to do.
Not at all. And, we saw it ourselves with the Celtics now. We know there was something there with Hayward all along, and it came to fruition. But stuff happens. So
I will tell you this. Wait, before you cut, I will tell you this. Chris Sheridan broke the LeBron heavy rumors in 2010, again when he left Miami for Cleveland, and he did it again tonight.
It's August, and we already have this. I mean, what does that say about this upcoming
season? It is going
season,
to be a circus.
Not even here.
It's great news for the Celtics. Great news for the Celtics. Great news for Hayward. And... who knows? Shock the world, baby! Shock the world.
And we'll keep an eye on Irving because that still is a big deal with what happens with him. If those big three are back, it's still going to be tough no matter what happens.
Let me ask you this. If KYRIE, if LeBron, which we already knew he wanted the trade, but now it's public, he wants the trade, does KYRIE stick around and hope to have the team with Kevin Love to himself? I mean, he wants more touches, right? He wants control of the team.
Well, that's the ideal situation for the Cavs, but I also don't think you can trade LeBron. It's tough because if you know LeBron's leaving, you want to hand the team off to KYRIE next, but that's going to be tough with the situation they have right now.
They are already done him dirty. Irving is gone. It doesn't. They do that, and then he just thinks they're a bunch of babies, right? He thinks they don't have any balls.
Well, in that
even though everybody else, I know, but that's what I'm saying. But even then, he still thinks he's like, no. So now you guys don't. You got no cojones. He won't respect them if they do that. You're right. It's what needed to happen. It's probably what should have happened, but it won't keep Kyrie Irving in town either. They've got a world of crap to deal with. They're probably best off keeping LeBron, gutting the rest of the team, and making LeBron deal with the mess that he just created. Right? That's what I do. That's what I would be like, you know what? You're leaving anyway, dude. We're gonna move on.
And I'll close it off with this. Why did he sign a 2-year deal? I mean, he did the ones for so long, and now that's just really holding him up now.
That's really the 2-year deal is the way that everybody's going now. I mean, because they're able to then touch on that last max contract. And again, I'm not gonna. This is a vidcast about Doc Rivers. I'm not gonna get into LeBron and how he's kind of
that
denigrated
shows us
the league,
how we just got caught up in the Doc Rivers era again. LeBron obsession every single day among Celtics fans.
Well, let's just
we did
I gotta tell you, Bobby, this is 2 episodes. We got the Doc Rivers list, and then we got this conversation because on YouTube I'm going to release it as 2 segments. So that's why I went down this road. Yeah, baby.
That just shows you we got back into that Doc Rivers.
So that's how you suckered me into 20 minutes, turn it into an hour. I see what you did there.
You know what I did. I'm always thinking,
Poulin. We know you're busy with your day job, but we're just it'll be 20 minutes. It won't take it's been an hour.
15.
I see what you did there.
We got 2 episodes.
That's
we got Justin 2
broadcast.
for 1.
I'm Bobby Manning. That's Nick Gelso and Justin Poulin. You can hear us all on the CLNS Media app. Celtics Stuff Live. Nick was on Celtics Beat talking about 08, as we've done this week. What else would we do? And find us on Celtics Blog. This week is History Week. That's why we did this. Lots of great stories from lots of people who lived through many eras of Celtics basketball. So we're all reminiscing over there about the eras of years past. And then we're going to talk about the Cavaliers. We're going to talk about the players on the Celtics this year, profiling all of them. We're going to do that here on the Banners broadcast as we now finally start to count down the days until training camp Thursday. The day this is coming out, 2 months to the day of opening day. They keep the calendar tight. It spins around real fast, and that's how we love it around here. Thanks, guys. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, Bobby. Thanks, Justin. This is fun, guys.